The Baltimore Ravens suffer a devastating 23-20 defeat to the Buffalo Bills in Week 4 of the 2022 season. We talk about that and more coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we are back here with another edition of Locked On Ravens here on Monday. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire. And of course, thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day here on Locked On Ravens. We are your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Be sure to follow along with us in audio form. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube as well. We're free and available on all platforms, including over on YouTube. And we are back here. It's not a victory Monday. Unfortunately, Baltimore suffers just a devastating, horrible defeat to the Buffalo Bills, 23-20. It was a game that Baltimore had in the first half. It looked like they controlled the entirety of the game, but second half, they let it slip away, and we'll talk about that, the theme that this has become for the Ravens throughout the course of the show, because really it felt like this team could be 3-1 right now, could be 4-0 right now, but instead they are sitting over at 2-2, which, I mean, is fine, but at the same time, it's not considering what they could have been. So we'll talk about all that here today on the show. In the first segment, we'll dive into the offense. In the second segment, the defense. And in the final segment, we'll talk about just what this team has to do differently and what's coming up for them with a tough test against Cincinnati coming up in Week 5. So we'll dive into all that here today. Again, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow along in audio form. It all helps out a ton. Follow me on Twitter at ChaosStrike34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. And before we continue with the sadness, we're going to be happy for a minute because it was my mom's birthday yesterday. I want to do a quick happy birthday shout out. Mom, thank you for everything. I greatly appreciate you. I love you. And again, just thank you for everything. But back to sadness. Here we go. Baltimore 23-20 lost to Buffalo. Offensively, this is a game that Baltimore got off to a very hot start. I mean, they get out to a 20-3 lead before halftime. And a lot of that had to do with some Lamar Jackson, some J.K. Dobbins. I mean, J.K. Dobbins returning in this game. This is his first game in front of M&T Bank, or a full M&T Bank Stadium, because obviously his rookie year was COVID, so there weren't a lot of fans, if any, in the stadium. And then you have the 2021 season, which obviously was his torn ACL year. So Lamar Jackson, we'll start with him before getting into Dobbins and the rest. 20-29, 144 yards. He had 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Definitely his worst day of the 2022 season. Wouldn't necessarily say it helped his MVP case in this one, especially with the loss. But again, you're not going to pin everything here on Lamar Jackson. There were some throws he missed. There were some things that he could have done better for sure. Also about 11 carries for 73 yards. But this is a game where it is a team effort. But I'm not going to say why the Ravens lose this game is because of Lamar Jackson. He contributed. You know, there were some, again, throws that I think you would have liked to have back. Maybe one getting out a little in front of him to Rashad Bateman, which we'll talk about him in a second too, because not great. But it's just, there are these things that he does that are so amazing, and I want to highlight those too. I mean, we see the play where he escapes from the sack and rolls out, throws to Devin Duvernay, who, like, the ball hits off of Mark Andrews and into Duvernay's hands. Like, those are the types of plays that makes Lamar Jackson just so fun to watch and just so amazing. And you're thinking, like, man, this guy in Baltimore is incredible. And he is still an incredible player. Obviously, every single game is not going to be, 4 passing touchdowns or whatever. And the Buffalo defense, I mean, yes, they were hurting in the secondary. The weather also did play a factor in this game for sure. It absolutely did. It was a wet game. It was a rainy game. And I think Jackson did feel the effects of that, as did, I think, both offenses and both defenses. So you have 29 attempts for Jackson compared to 33 rushing attempts for the team. Justice Hill, 8 for 45, but he left the game on a non-contact injury, and the team ruled it, I believe, as a hamstring injury. And he's been, I think, their best running back so far this year. Now, J.K. Dobbins is on his way to taking that after his performance on Sunday, but I've been very impressed with Justice Hill. I was impressed with him in this game as well. He, again, showed burst. J.K. Dobbins, 13 for 41 in the score. He, I think, also had a couple of really nice runs, still getting back into the groove. He also had 4 receptions for 22 yards and a touchdown. So 2 touchdowns for J.K. Dobbins. But Then we kind of get into Devin Duvernay did have a nice game. Don't get me wrong. But Rashad Bateman, 3 for 17. He leaves the game with an injury. Mark Andrews virtually invisible out there, 2 for 15. I mean, what wasn't a great day for Baltimore's top 2 pass catchers. Rashad Bateman had, depending on how you classify it, anywhere from 1 to 3 drops. There you could say 1 was out in front, it doesn't count. Glanced off his fingertips, it doesn't count. But depending on how you classify, 1 to 3 drops. But we have seen the drops be an issue for Bateman over the course of the year so far. He has to be able to come in with footballs. I mean, he does. It's okay to have a drop here and there, right? Everybody does it. But an issue of Marquise Brown was the drops. We have seen Rashad Bateman have some drop issues early on in his career. I think he can fix it. He has great hands. We saw a catch from him that was incredible. Ball control, possessing it. He has that potential. I think we'll see it kind of ironed out as we go on here, but, there have been some issues with it. So that I would like to see cleaned up. But I know that for offense, and this is what I really want to touch on, the big thing here is John Harbaugh's decision. John Harbaugh's decision on 4th down. Well, there are 2. We'll start with the Harbaugh decision. On 4th down, John Harbaugh, you're at the Bills' 2-yard line if you're John Harbaugh. It is a tie game, 20-20. You could kick a field goal, right? Take the easy points, take the lead, and have your defense go back out there and try to stop Josh Allen and that Bills offense in the rain. Or you could go for the touchdown, go up by 6 or 7, and then have the Bills have to score a touchdown. Now, in that situation, I'm taking the points, 100%. I'm taking the points. I was floored. I still am floored that John Harbaugh decided to go for it. I think it was the wrong decision. Obviously, you can look at hindsight and say, "Oh, you're just saying that because it wasn't successful." And I will say no. When the offense stayed on the field, I'm thinking, what in the world is going on right now? I think it sends a message that you don't trust your defense if you're John Harbaugh, even though he said after the game that it gives you the best chance to win the game, this, that, and the other. I think in a way, even that message is still sending a message that he doesn't trust the defense. The try ends up failing. And I will say that Devin Duvernay was wide open in the end zone. There was an opportunity for them to convert and score the touchdown, but you have the opportunity to take the lead. I mean, you have the surefire chip shot, Justin Tucker, unless something catastrophic happens. You're going to be able to get those 3 points, take the lead, and then you can try to stop the Buffalo offense, which I know is a tough task, right? It's no guarantee, obviously. In Buffalo, after the try ended up going down and scoring the field goal anyway, so no harm, no foul. But they scored a field goal and they won by 3 in a game the Ravens passed up a field goal and tried to score the touchdown. So, look, we've seen these decisions before, and honestly, the Ravens shouldn't have even been in a situation where they had to be in a situation to have to go for it on a 4th down or not. I mean, that drive was 14 minutes, I believe. It was 14 plays. It was a 14-play drive. And we saw it 2 weeks ago against Miami, where the Ravens had an 18-play drive, and they couldn't score. The Ravens have a 14-play drive, and they can't score. You have to be able to punch the ball in the end zone, and if not, you have to come away with some amount of points. I mean, the situations are different, right? Every situation, it's different, I will say. But in this one, you have the opportunity late in the game where the offense hadn't scored the entire second half. This would have been the first points the Ravens offense scored in the second half. It was sputtering, no traction, 3 and outs, etc., pressure, etc. You have the opportunity to take the points and trust your defense, which, again, I understand that the defense has been leaky this year, right? I said that all leading up to this game. I said I want to see it from the defense. Can they stop Josh Allen? Can they stop Stephon Diggs, etc.? And we'll talk about that. But I still think that in that situation, you have to take the points. You have to take the surefire lead. And then at that point, you can say, you know what, let's go out there. And then even if Buffalo does score a touchdown, I think the offense would have still had time. But this is the thing, we'll never know. It happened as it happened, and we'll never know how the 80 million of the scenarios would have played out. I just personally think Baltimore should have taken 3 points there. I know a lot of people agree. I know a lot of people disagree. It's a very controversial topic right now, and I'm not saying that you're wrong if you think that they should have gone for it on 4th down. I think there are clear arguments for it, but I think the argument that John Harbaugh made does send a message to the defense that I don't trust you to keep a 3-point lead because of what I've seen. And I don't think that's a great message to send personally. I know that might not be what he was intending to do, but I think it is what it is a little bit. I think that is the message he is sending. I think that's why Marcus Peters got so upset. Obviously, that's not confirmed. We don't know that right now, but I would make a pretty safe bet that he saw the field goal team not getting put out there, and he's like, whoa, what's going on here? And apparently, according to a fan that was there, I can't remember, and who knows if this is true or not, but Peters was running down the sideline screaming at Harbaugh to let him trust the defense. And, the fourth down happens, and then the rest of the game happens, and then obviously Peters and Harbaugh have to be separated. So it was a big mess of a situation. We know the Ravens are an analytics team. We know they're going to go for it on the fourth downs. It wasn't the principle of it wasn't a shock. It wasn't a shock to me that Baltimore went for it on fourth down. It was the situation that it was in that shocked me. We've seen Baltimore go for the win. We've seen Baltimore do this on a fourth down. We've seen Baltimore do that. But you have Justin Tucker. You have a clear 99.99999 etc. percent chance at taking the lead late in the game, or you can stifle the Bills offense and hope that happens. And I think that that's just what I would have done in this situation. And I know it's hard to trust the defense based off of the leakage we've seen, but I don't know. A surefire lead to me sounds pretty nice as opposed to what did happen at the end of the day. I thought that before the play happened, and I certainly thought it after the play happened. I'll tell you that. So the offense is disappointing the way the game started and how they were clicking and how they were moving the ball on the field a little bit. And then at the end of the day, Baltimore's offense does not score in the second half and only total 296 yards for the day. On a day, they held the ball for 38 minutes and 10 seconds compared to Buffalo's 21 minutes and 50 seconds. So it was not a great showing from the offense, especially in the second half. And in the second segment, we'll be diving into what the defense did in that game. So be sure to stay tuned. We still have a ton to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. But first, I do want to tell you a bit about PrizePicks. And for fantasy, it's been a huge part of my life. I'm looking to go 4-0 in a couple leagues here, so it's been a decent fantasy year for me. But if you want something a little different, if you want daily fantasy, be sure to go to PrizePicks. And PrizePicks is super fun because you can have a ton of current entries. You can win a ton of money, too. That's an awesome perk. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they all go score more or less in their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. No competing against any other people. It's just you versus projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport you watch, like the NFL, the NBA, the MLB. You have NHL, PGA, college football, college basketball, etc. And you can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. You have safe and fast withdrawals is currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to PrizePicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match with $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. You deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On and sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100. We're back here with our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Here on Monday, Kevin Ostreicher is still here with you talking about the Ravens' 23-20 loss to the Buffalo Bills in Week 4. And a lot of my talk over the past week leading up to this game was about the defense. And I kind of alluded to that in the first segment. Can the Ravens stop Josh Allen? Can the Ravens stop Stephon Diggs, et cetera, et cetera? Well, they did an okay job. I mean, especially in the first half, they were playing with fire. They were playing with energy. And outside of that last drive, where, again, 2-minute defense for Baltimore has been a struggle for them and Mike McDonald, something they definitely have to shore up moving forward. But you see Josh Allen throw an interception to Marlon Humphrey on the first possession of the game. I thought Humphrey played phenomenal football, by the way. I mean, the Stephon Diggs was pretty much a non-factor for the most part. Did lead the team in yards, but he had a long of 23. It was kind of towards the end of the game he was able to show up. It wasn't like a 10-reception, 150 game. It wasn't the Devontae Parker special either, where he averaged over 30 yards a catch. 4 for 62 for Stephon Diggs, considering what he's done this year, is a pretty good thing to hold him to. So I was happy in that regard. Buffalo's rushing offense averaged 5 yards per carry. Devin Singletary, 4.5 yards. Josh Allen, 6.4 yards per carry. So it was okay. The run defense was all right. Early on in the game, you see a forced fumble by Odafe Owe, who we'll talk about him in a second, a decision that he made, but it was nice to see him at least make some impact plays. He had that. He also had his first sack of the year as well. But yeah, I think for what this Ravens defense did in the first half compared to what we saw in the second half, we just saw the armor starting to get ripped off a little bit, piece by piece by piece. And it started with the end of the first half, where the Ravens had an opportunity to go into the half up 20-3, getting the ball back, and potentially having the opportunity to go up 27-3, depending on what the offense was able to do with that first possession, because Baltimore did get the ball to start the second half. Well, the Bills ended up scoring a touchdown right before the half, so that makes it 20-10. So you're going into half after what was a dominant first half by the Ravens. You're thinking, oh, they're only up by 10. Like, that's not what the game indicates is going on right now. Then the Ravens offense can't do anything on that first possession, and then it kind of spirals from there where, again, it's like the armor getting ripped off. You miss tackle here, a penalty there. Speaking of penalties, the referees were, I'll be nice, horrendous in this game. It was really, 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 really bad. Jerome Boger had a terrible game. His crew had a terrible game. It was awful. And you had a bad spot on what clearly should have been a Lamar Jackson first down. You have the roughing the passer penalty on Brandon Stevens, which just like, what in the world is that? And then after the game, Jerome Boger doubles down and says, oh yeah, forcible contact to the head and neck area. And you look at the replays and you're like, I don't see that. And I don't think you did either. So it's just like all this stuff that goes. And so the Ravens obviously had a tough task of beating the Bills. They also had a tough task of beating the refs. But at the end of the day, you can't put yourself in a situation where you have to have a call or two impact the game so closely, right? You want to put yourself in a situation where the refs can't impact the game at all, even if there is a call or two. It don't go your way. Now for the Ravens, it was multiple. There was also a couple pass interference. I mean, the one on Mark Andrews, and then you had the one where the corner gets there super early on a Ravens receiver and it's not called. So like it is a laundry list of issues there. But at the same time, you see Patrick Queen struggle a little bit. You see Odafe Owe, who did have the fumble and the sack. Another key moment in this game was when Buffalo was driving at the end of the game, and you're thinking, well, look, they're already inside the Baltimore red zone. Just let them score, get the ball back to your offense. And the Ravens had that same thought process. And you see the ball get snapped, Singletary take the ball, and you see guys start to like whiff on tackles, like on purpose. Like Marcus Williams like kind of throws his arms out but doesn't really try to tackle him. And you're thinking, all right, cool, they're going to let him score. The Ravens offense will get the ball back with some time left to see if they can score a touchdown, and that'll be that. And then Odafe comes out of nowhere and tries to get a punch out and tackles Devin Singletary. And that effectively ends the game because the Bills can just run the clock out. The Ravens are powerless in that situation. And Tyler Bass hits the field goal, chip shot that Justin Tucker should have hit. And that's the game. So Owe was asked about it after the game, and he pretty much said, yeah, the call in the huddle was you can either go for the strip or let him in the end zone. And so the whole Ravens defense, outside of Odafe, let him in the end zone, except Owe was the one player who got to him and tackled him. And then the clock keeps running, and that's it. So it's awareness, it's decision making, it's learning. I get it, but you just have to be better in those situations with the Ravens, because even if the game was slowly slipping out of hand, right? The offense could get anything going. The defense was kind of struggling a little bit. There were two huge plays, one by the offense, one by the defense, in a span of like 3 minutes, or probably even less, that you have decide the entire game. And that is the fourth down decision by John Harbaugh and the tackle by Odafe Owe. Those are the two plays that stick out the most to me late in the game. You can say had the clear most impact on this game. And again, we're never going to know what would have happened if Baltimore's offense got the ball back. Maybe they would have gone 3 and out or 4 and out, and it wouldn't have even mattered. But you're not giving your offense the chance. By tackling Devin Singletary there, you are effectively ending the football game. And I don't know. It's tough because this team has so much talent on defense, but it's the same thing over and over. This was a 17-point lead that Baltimore blew. They blew a 21-point lead 2 weeks ago against the Dolphins. They're 0-2 at home this year. I think the stat, and I think Jonas Schaefer tweeted this out of 120 minutes that they have played, they have not led for 14 of them. They have not led in a game at home for 14 seconds. They have led in all other seconds, all other minutes, but not led for just 14 of those seconds, and they're 0-2 at home. They're 0-2 at home. And for a team that's usually so good at home, it's a little shocking that the execution is not there. I mean, Calais Campbell's playing a ton of snaps. You have guys having to rotate in and out. They were thin again at the outside linebacker position with Justin Houston not there. Jason Pierre-Paul, credit to him for playing so many snaps and actually being out there and doing stuff, because it was definitely short notice, but he was able to come out there, but I think you need more in terms of just late game execution. This goes back. This isn't also just a this year thing. Last year, the Ravens blew plenty of leads late in the game, where we were talking about earlier in the year how the defense, like, they couldn't tackle and they couldn't communicate, and it was like really, really crippling and really, really bad. They kind of shored that up a little bit throughout the year, and we didn't see as many miscommunications. We didn't see as many missed tackles. But then it was the late game execution where they blew a lead to the Rams and they blew a lead to the Steelers one time. And it's just all this different stuff going hand in hand and hand in hand, where, look, Don Martindale isn't in Baltimore anymore. Don Martindale is in New York. You have to be able, everybody was like, all right, well, now that Don Martindale's not there and this is here and that's there, it's all going to be better. And we're not going to see the late game collapses, and we're not going to see this, that, and the other. It's still kind of there. So where's the issue? Yeah, we have to figure it out if you're Baltimore, and we're going to talk about that in the final segment, just where the Ravens go from here. Where is there blame in these situations? Where does that go around? Talk a bit about Cincinnati as well. There's a lot to talk about this team, because they're a 2-2 team that should be 4-0 right now. So be sure to stay tuned. We still have a ton to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. First, though, I do want to tell you a bit about Built Bar. And if you haven't tried the Built Bar Puffs yet, you are really missing out on one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor in the cookie dough. It's covered in chocolate, and the build has done it again with the cookie dough chunk puffs that have a light and chewy texture. There's real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered at 100% real chocolate. And cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Like all Built Bars, new cookie dough chunk puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and they're tasty. They also have chocolate-covered cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture that is so good. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff, whether you need a snack for your workout, a late-night treat, or just need to grab a quick bite. Build is the perfect protein bar, and they taste better than a candy bar. Just the calories and fat and sugar. Grab yourself a protein bar. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15. Get 50% off of your order. Use promo code LOCK15. We're back here with our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostrager, your host, still here with you. Thank you so much for tuning in today, making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. And thank you for tuning in after a loss. I really appreciate that. I know it's not easy to tune in after a loss, especially one like this where it's a blown lead and you think the Ravens are winning. So thank you for tuning in. We're gonna get through this together. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna figure it all out. If you want to comment down below your thoughts, whether you're venting or whatnot, please feel more than free to go ahead. This is a safe space. At least I try to make it here just to have it be a place where people can listen, talk, and do whatnot about this game, because, look, it's a tough one. The Ravens had an opportunity to go 4-0 with a win against Miami and a win against Buffalo. They blew a 21-point lead and a 17-point lead. And look, when you're talking about blame and accountability, this is a 1 through 53, every player, every coach, every general manager, etc. But I think you have to look to John Harbaugh in these situations. And I'm not here to say John Harbaugh is getting fired. I can pretty much tell you, and I think a lot of other people can too, that they'd be pretty shocked if John Harbaugh is fired in the near future. Maybe if this is a team that just tanks we're talking about a 4-win team in December or something, that could be it. But I can't sit here and tell you that there shouldn't be change in some other areas. Now, I don't think at this point that's a coaching change, right? I don't think Greg Roman is on the way out, or Mike McDonald is on the way out or anything. But we did see 2019. Let's go back to 2019. You see the Ravens 2-2 start. A little different, right? A little different, but the Ravens give up 500 yards in back-to-back games. 1,000 total yards in 2 games. It's pretty bad. What did the Ravens do? What did Eric DeCosta do? They made changes. They made some decently big ones. They cut Tim Williams, who was a 3rd-round pick just a couple years prior. They bring in both Josh Bynes and LJ Fort. And then a couple weeks after that, they trade Kenny Young and a 5th-round pick to the Rams to get Marcus Peters, who then makes his debut against Seattle. There's Seattle. and he ends up having a pick six and making an impact. And obviously, he is the Marcus Peters that we know here today in Baltimore. So I'm thinking more along those lines, where the Ravens have to shake something up personnel-wise, whether that is a benching, whether that is bringing in other people. The issue with this, and there are a couple you can look at, the issue with this is they don't have a ton of cap flexibility. Depends what they want to give up. Or are they in a situation where they feel like they can give up a young player, or they feel like they can give up a draft pick? Can they match salaries? Where's the position they're looking at? Like, do you go and you get cornerback depth? Do you bring in an outside linebacker? That'd be one of my choices. Do you go and get a middle linebacker? Do you go and get an offensive tackle? I think that'd be probably too expensive. A wide receiver? Like, where do you go if you're the Ravens in these situations? I think outside linebacker is probably your number one priority if you're Baltimore. And again, this is an if, I'm not saying they are actively looking, but if they are looking to acquire and help at the outside linebacker position, help anywhere, how is this player going to impact the team both now and in the future? Now, maybe Baltimore waits until after week 5 to see what happens, but you don't want to keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. I think Baltimore will try to make a move. I don't know if they will or not, but that's just my hunch. But things can't keep going the way that they are. You can talk about, we're going to go in and fix it next week, we're going to get back in the lab, but you have to put it on. It's like the Kyle Hamilton thing we were talking about, right? Kyle Hamilton took accountability, right? He said, we are going, like, I understand what I did, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to get better. Like, obviously I'm paraphrasing, but then in week 3, he goes out and he has this huge play against Nelson Aguilar. Like, he said, look, here's my accountability. Now I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with it. The Ravens have to do that exact same thing. They can't just say, here's the accountability. Oh, let's go blow another 17-point lead again. Because that's what happened yesterday. The Ravens, after Miami, we're going to fix this. It's never going to happen again. You know, we understand we have to fix these issues. And then what happened yesterday? We know what happened yesterday. And it can't continue, because I think the Ravens are a good team. I do. But they're not playing like it right now. They are not playing like a good team in the second half of games. The first half, they were great. They were a great team in the first half. The first half of games, the Ravens are a great football team. The second half of games, the Ravens have disappeared. And I'm not saying the Jets game, like, I'm kind of taking out the Jets game in the situation, but week 2 against the Dolphins, the fourth quarter, the Ravens disappeared. The second half against New England got a little iffy. Kyle Hamilton kind of saves the day there. And then you have week 4 against Buffalo, where, again, you probably should have won this game. And I think that's why it's so frustrating to so many people, is because it's right there for them. And the issues that we have talked about for a year, maybe a little less, but a year, maybe even more in some instances, right? Maybe even more. Pressure with 4 has been inconsistent. And obviously that has to do some with personnel. Like, I do understand that. I'm not trying to say that the Ravens have to be perfect in every single aspect, because for any NFL team, that's not realistic, right? You have to have those realistic expectations. But at the same time, this is a team with extremely high expectations. They're getting their guys back. They're working guys in. And it's week 4, right? This is week 4. It's the first month of the year. We're done with the first month of the season. We have a long way to go. The Ravens have a long way to go. The team we're going to be talking about in December, it's not the team we're talking about today or tomorrow or Wednesday or whatever. I have confidence they can turn it around, but they have to show it. They have to show it, and they have to show it soon. It can't be they show it in week 12. It will be too late by then. You have to show it in week 5 against Cincinnati. You have to move on from this loss, and you have to actually not blow leads anymore. Actually be able to sustain offensive consistency, right? It's those types of things where it makes a huge difference, because we've seen the greatness of Lamar Jackson. We've seen what he can do carrying the team on his back. Lamar Jackson has been such a bright spot for this team this year, even in the losses. Now, Buffalo is not an amazing game for him. Like, I'm more talking like the Miami game, where his performance in that game was lost because the defense blew a lead. And look, the offense couldn't score at the end of the game either, I understand, but it comes back to John Harbaugh having to lead his guys. He is a player's coach. He is known as a leader. He has to be able to do it. And infighting with Marcus Peters is not great. Now, I know that there's a lot of unknown to that situation and just what's going on there. Obviously, he talked a bit about it after the game. He says he still loves Marcus Peters. He knows Marcus Peters loves him too. You know, I think John Harbaugh is a great person. I also think he's a good coach, but he has to be able to fit the needs of this team. And if he's not able to do that, then the Ravens have to find someone who will. And I don't know what that is. I think it absolutely can't be John Harbaugh. I'm not giving up on John Harbaugh or anything. I know a lot of people have. I'm not on that train yet. But I think that for what the Ravens have on their roster in all three phases, for the coaching staff that they have too much talent to keep having this happen to them when we have identified this issue for months or years or whatever, and it continues to creep back in. And I talk about it like the missed tackles. We saw missed tackles on Sunday, and it wasn't like horrendous where they were missing tackles every play. Sometimes it felt like it, but they weren't. But it's those plays that get the opposing offense 5 extra yards, 7 extra yards, and they're here and there. They contribute a ton. Miscommunications in some aspects, you have to make sure they're nothing. So that's another aspect of things for defense. Baltimore's Week 5 matchup against Cincinnati. Can you contain Jamar Chase? Can you contain T. Higgins? Can you contain Tyler Boyd? Joe Burrow? That defense in Cincinnati has some players on it too. I think that this is a game the Ravens have to get up for. It's a revenge game. They lost twice to Cincinnati in pretty embarrassing fashion. So I think that if the Ravens can get up for that game, get right in that game, things will be able to get a little bit back on track. But I know right now it's all doom and gloom for some people, where it's all they have to fire John Harbaugh and they have to fire Mike Macdonald and they have to make all these personnel changes. It's not there yet for me. It's not. And honestly, it's way too early in the season for it to be there for me, because John Harbaugh's had the success and had the track record, but you have to continue that success and track record. You can't always rely on that, right? You know what I'm saying? He's still someone who has had that success, valuable experience. His players still love him, but you have to continue to build on that if you're John Harbaugh. So we'll talk about this throughout the rest of the week. Just again, what went wrong for the Ravens, how they have to improve, and then obviously looking forward to Cincinnati. But I know it's a tough feeling here on this Monday because just how the game went down, how this team should be 4-0 right now, and multiple different aspects, multiple different situations, and multiple different scenarios. So we'll be diving into this Ravens team throughout the rest of the weekend. If you want to support the channel, support the show, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow along in audio form as well. But that's all I have here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. When we get back here tomorrow, we'll be diving into more Ravens talk. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you right back here tomorrow.